Hello, listeners and kinky friends. Welcome to the Sofia Gray Show, where we discuss all things sex, kinks, and fetishes. From the sex stories to the latest trends in the erotic world, we talk taboo transparently. This podcast is brought to you by Sofia Gray, the largest used underwear marketplace. I'm Lacey Bloom.
And I'm Tracy Bust.
And today, I am so excited.
Oh my God. Yes.
We've got such a treat for our listeners because not only are we going to be discussing the ins and the outs of wax play, but we also have the pleasure of being joined by a very special guest. She's a sex blogger, author, and self-proclaimed pervert with over 20,000 Twitter followers. And now she's taking on audio porn. So everyone, please join me in welcoming Girl on the Net.
Oh, hi.
Sorry, I think we lost you for a second. Hi, Girl on the Net. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi. Thank you for having me on the podcast.
Absolutely. We'd love to hear a little bit about what you do. You know, we know that you're a sex blogger and author. I love that you're a self-proclaimed pervert like the rest of us.
Yes.
And we'd love, and now you're taking on the world of audio porn. How did you kind of get your start in this whole world of the sex blogging and authoring and everything?
Well, so I've been doing it for quite a long time. I started in 2011. And what kicked me off doing it was I've always enjoyed writing, and I've always enjoyed sex since I discovered it when I was younger and was like, okay, I'm into this. And I had a past relationship that was quite kinky, and my partner and I tried lots and lots of different things. And then there was a brief period of time where he and I considered starting a sex blog together, but we never really got round to it. So once we split up, I asked him if I could have permission to share some of the stories and start writing my own blog. And then obviously I sort of got into dating and started seeing lots of different people and doing lots more kinky stuff. And I thought, yeah, why not give this a go? I'll start writing about my adventures online, and everything's just kind of taken off from there, really.
That's wonderful. I love that. I love that you asked his permission too before diving into the blog world. That was so cool of you.
Oh, well, it's kind of, I mean, I don't necessarily have permission from every person that I write about, just because a lot of the encounters I've written about are sort of one-offs, or they're with people who I'm no longer in contact with. But when it comes to significant relationships, I always want to make sure that, you know, if I'm an anonymous writer, and if anybody ever does find out my name, I don't want that to come as a horrible shock to any of the lovely ex-boyfriends who've been generous enough to share their time and penises with me.
Fair enough.
Okay, so what was your favorite penis? I'm just kidding.
They're all brilliant.
Oh, that's so sweet.
All penises are created equal.
Oh, that's very, very inclusive. Well, I have a question. Like, let's say someone is interested in kink. What do you think? And is like a good, is gateway the right term? Like, how does someone, if they're interested in kink, get into it? What's like a proper way to kind of begin that journey?
Oh, that's a great question. It's really like, I think personally it depends a lot on the person and the kind of stuff that they're comfortable with. So when I first sort of started getting into kink and exploring, I'm mostly submissive in terms of my sex life, although I do sometimes switch and play as a dominant as well sometimes. I'm just generally enjoy lots of different kinks and fetishes. When I first started getting into it at the time, this is a very long time ago, so it was mostly via web forums, and there were a couple of sex bloggers at the time who I used to read quite frequently, but there weren't nearly as many avenues to get into it, because obviously people weren't putting as much of their lives on the internet as they are now. Nowadays, I think for people who are looking to get started with a kink, I would always advise, firstly, finding out, just doing a search around sex bloggers, and plus, you know, including keywords about your particular kinks. I'm pretty sure there will always be a sex blogger or two out there who are into the kind of things that you're into. And reading someone else's experiences can be a really good way of, you know, exploring those fantasies, and also hopefully kind of learning that, you know, it's not necessarily weird to have particular types of fantasies. That's one of the things I liked most about sort of exploring my kinks online was being able to see that, oh, okay, I'm not weird because I enjoy this. Other people enjoy this too. And so reading other people's experiences really helped me to feel more comfortable with things. The other thing I think as well is porn. Obviously, these days there's so much more porn than there ever was when I was younger. And looking, finding relevant clips and subscribing to porn sites that do the kind of content that you enjoy. Again, it's a really good way to explore stuff. And when you're doing it in that way, there isn't so much pressure to perform. If you sort of sign up to FetLife and start dating people and immediately leap in with, I want to do this or that kink, that's quite an intense and swift way to, you're sort of jumping in with both feet first. Whereas I think, porn and sex blogs is a great way to explore it without having to worry about whether or not you're doing it right, or whether or not, you need to know how to make sure that you're doing everything consensually and discussing things with your partners in the right way before you start it. So exploring stuff online is a really good way to start that process.
Absolutely. Agreed.
Yeah.
And then as far as porn goes, I mean, you've launched yourself now into creating audio porn, which I feel like is like the wave of the future as far as porn goes. I personally find it so interesting and satisfying to listen to. So can you talk a little bit about how you sort of began the transition into audio porn?
Yeah, sure. Audio porn is one of my favourite things that I do. And what's really interesting is that recently it's had a huge amount of attention. Like in the last few weeks, I've had so many journalists contacting me and wanting to talk about it and, understand why it's so popular. I think it's such an intimate medium. You've got your headphones on and someone's whispering sexy stories in your ear, and it is something about it is, I just think, really delightfully intimate. But the way I got into it was a couple. There was one guy, and then someone else mentioned it a couple of weeks afterwards. But a guy who follows me on Twitter and had been reading my blog for a while, who is blind and uses a screen reader, pointed out to me that although the website itself is accessible, so blind people can, access my website and hear my words through a screen reader, it's not very sexy when it's read aloud in the automated robot voice that usually comes with this software. It's difficult to masturbate to, unless that's your particular kink. So he said, it basically was like, oh, have you ever considered recording some of your work? And it had never occurred to me before, but I thought, why not give that a go? Like, I want to make sure that as many people as possible can access my website and enjoy the stories there if they want to. So I started recording it, and it's just completely taken off. Like the first year of doing it was quite quiet. And then recently, so many more people, I think possibly because people are listening to more podcasts and things these days, and we're used to consuming media. Like now, you can get such an amazing variety of podcasts, well, like this one, that cover so many different sexual topics. People are also kind of interested in hearing erotica as well.
I think there's something to be said about the fantasy element with audio porn that you don't necessarily get from watching porn, in that, you get a lot more power of sort of imagining yourself in this scenario with a partner, an element of voyeurism even, that I think is unlike anything I've heard before. And I think you're absolutely right. With podcasts on the rise and everything, that there really is a lot more we can digest in so many different ways.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a really good point about, the power of your own imagination as something that layers on when you're listening to audio porn. I try fairly hard not to include too much direct physical description of people in when I write stuff. So, I might say someone's tall, but I wouldn't go into a huge amount of detail about every, exactly how they look, because I think that that's something, it's nice to be able to put yourself in the picture when you're listening to an erotic story, or it's also nice to be able to put other people you fancy in the picture and, imagine people how you like and however you would like them to be. So yeah, I think that's quite a nice feature of audio porn as well. That's sort of, you have a little bit of imagination. And the words take you through the story and the action and exactly what's happening.
This is a dumb question, and I don't mean to I am going to come off as stupid, but it's not my intention. Is audio porn entirely fictionalized? Like, are there ever like any other people joining you, or is it mostly just like one solo person narrating a fictional scenario?
Okay. That's not a dumb question at all. That's a really good question. It's actually, so audio porn itself encompasses so much different stuff. So my work is predominantly real life stories. So it's things that I've done in real life. And I'm basically telling you about all of the sex that I've had and how hot it was and all the different details about, you know, this or that particular scene. But I also do some fiction. So, you know, I'll write like erotic fiction series or like different little scenes because I want to capture a particular fantasy that I haven't been able to fulfill in real life yet. But then there are loads of other places where you can find audio porn where it sounds very different to the kind of stuff that I'm making. So there'll be some audio where someone will have written it just as a person-to-person script. So you as the listener will hear them saying, and now I take off your clothes and I want to touch you here. And, you know, they're as if they're speaking directly to you. And then you also have some audio porn where people are recording the literal sounds of them having sex or masturbating, like listening to the sexy groaning noises they make when they come or what have you. So, yeah, I mean, I think probably the answer is, yeah, audio porn can be pretty much anything as long as someone's making it and someone else gets turned on by it.
I love it. You mentioned that you like to record sometimes these fantasies that maybe you haven't fulfilled yet in your personal life. Do you find that by putting that sort of out in the universe that some of these fantasies are coming true for you?
Do you know, there are quite a few. So I have a partner at the moment and I'm mostly monogamous, although we do sometimes play with friends or like sleep with people we know quite well. But I do often, if there's something in particular that I've had this idea and I'm like, oh, that'd be really hot, I will often direct him to my blog and say, oh, you might just want to check out the thing I wrote on Wednesday. And then and then he'll come back and go, oh yeah, let's give that a go. This sounds so narcissistic, but genuinely, like my favourite moments are when occasionally he'll let me know. He doesn't read my blog that often, but occasionally he'll like call me into the bedroom and say, I've just been reading your blog post, and then he'll let me suck him off while he rereads the blog post as I give him a blowjob. That's always quite fun.
That sounds like a fantastic day.
Yeah, I mean, it's like academic and sexual. You know what I mean? Like you're getting some reading in, which we all should do more, and getting a good old blowy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Win-win for everyone.
So when you're doing audio porn, like what's your secret, like as a performer, to like making it as like sexy as possible?
Do you know, it's really difficult because I think I have to be in the right frame of mind and in the right mood. As a general rule, I try to record a batch of audio all at once. And usually all I need really is I need to be alone. Like the most recent ones I've been recording have been done in a studio. And the first couple of times I had the producer in the room with me while I was doing it, and I felt a little bit too awkward. So the other ones, he's sort of just sets up the mic and then I step outside. He steps outside. But I think generally for me, because I've always been a words person, and I've always found, I think words are like the most erotic thing. Like when people talk to me during sex, that for me is just right up there as one of the sexiest things. So just the very act of reading stuff, you know, you put yourself into a kind of calm state, read it nice and slowly, give plenty of pauses so there's lots of time for people to think about what they're hearing and picture themselves in the scene, and then just speaking in that kind of slow, calm way. That's usually enough to get me in the mood to do a reading.
You're making reading sexy again. I love it.
Reading's always been sexy. We just forgot.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think people, if they listen to your audio porn and they read your blog, they'll have no problem remembering that it is a sexy act.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. Oh yeah, I would love for them to come and check it out. And it's also, I have a Patreon which helps me fund the audio porn work. But although Patreons get stuff on early access and they get some exclusive stuff, it's mostly like pretty much all of my audio eventually goes on my website for free, just because for me the most important thing is getting it shared and spread with as many people as possible who want it. And then I fund most of my site through advertising because I like having that like free to access thing. So anybody and everybody can come and listen and enjoy and share it with their friends who might also like a bit of audio porn.
That's fantastic. I love that you're just doing it to get it out there for people to digest. I mean, like you said, when you were first exploring kink, that, there weren't a lot of websites or bloggers for you to check out and find out more information. And now you're one of those bloggers putting that information out there.
Yeah. It's actually one of the nicest things about my job is I get emails from people sometimes saying, I had this similar kinks to you and I always thought I was a bit weird or there was something wrong with me, and I was really pleased to find your blog. And it, it's nice to know that I'm not alone and I'm not the only one who feels like this. And I really like getting those emails because I feel like, oh yeah, that was me, 15 years ago. And it's nice to be able to spread the word and help other people feel a bit less alone.
I do have a question. As people are exploring their kinks, looking things up on the website, watching porn, listening to audio porn, what do you think is and maybe there's more than one, what do you think are some of the ways that people can find partners that might be interested in their shared kinks?
Oh, yeah, good question. It's it kind of, it depends a lot on the sort of person that they are. I know lots of kinky people recommend going to munches, which are basically just meet-up type events of other kinky people where rather than going to a play party and jumping in at the deep end, everybody meets in a bar or in a cafe and you just have a chat and you can get to know some of the people on your local scene. They're generally very good, but for people like me, I'm incredibly shy and I'm not very good at talking to people in person. If I had a job that involved networking, I'd run a mile. So for me, I think online is a really good way to do it. There are sites like FetLife where you can, this is like a social network for kinky people. There's also Twitter. For me, Twitter has been an absolutely incredible way to find other people who are into my kind of kinks and, talk to other. I don't tend to hook up with people on Twitter because, as I say, I'm monogamous. I do get a lot of messages, though, from people who don't know that. But so, yeah, Twitter is a great way because, again, often people will be there to promote their blogs or talk about, their own kinks and their own fetishes and stuff. And so that's also a really good way to find people, I think. So, yeah, it kind of depends. If you're a confident person, then I think a munch is a great way to go. And if you're a bit less confident, then there's loads of places online where you can send messages back and forward with people if you're not yet confident enough to actually go and meet up in real life.
Yeah, cool. I have a question. You consider yourself a self-proclaimed pervert, and pervert always, in society still, I think, has a negative connotation. And I would love to know, this process of how you kind of took that word back and are using it as like a self-empowering identity.
Sure. Okay. So. Oh, do you know, I'm wondering if this might be a British thing. So it's, I know it definitely does tend to have more negative connotations, but I think here in the UK, I know more people who would happily use the term pervert with a big grin on their face just to mean a kind of
moving to the UK.
Interesting. Yeah, we're going to have to make our move to the UK immediately.
It's that kind of, so I'll tell you where it came from is for a while I lived abroad and while I was over there, I was in a bondage club with my partner and the barmaid behind the bar was asking us, right, okay, so what are you? Are you a dominant? Are you a submissive? Like, what are you? And I didn't speak the language very well and I didn't know how to say, I'm good with anything. Like I try lots and lots of different things. I knew the word for dominant. I knew the word for submissive, but what I felt I was, it's kind of everything. The only other word I knew was hentai, which means pervert. So I just said, "Oh, I'm just a pervert," and she thought that was quite funny. So from then, it's kind of just a way for me to sort of encompass the fact that, I have particular kinks that I really enjoy. Like I like being spanked, I like being dominated, I like being tied up. As a general rule, I like kind of anything that makes me feel used or humiliated. However, almost every time I come across a new and interesting kink, I always think to myself, oh God, I think I'd probably really enjoy that. So splosh, for instance, the getting all covered in custard and delicious, like sticky, custardy kind of fluids. It's never really been my kink, but as soon as somebody told me about it, I was like, right, now I need to give that a go. So for me, the word pervert essentially just means, I'm up for trying almost anything, within reason, within the law, and, as long as it's not something truly horrific. I like the playfulness of trying out lots of different kinks.
You're the try anything at least once girl.
Yeah, I think so. I've had, I have, some hard limits, but most of the time, I'm trying to think of an example. Yeah, like most of the time, if there's something, like for instance, I'm not particularly into feet, and fetishism hasn't ever really been my thing, but I love the idea of a guy masturbating onto my feet, because I once read someone who was talking about how much they desperately wanted to do it. And I was like, oh, well, if someone really wanted to do it, I'd be like, yeah, that sounds really horny. Or with sniffing underwear is a great example as well. Like it never occurred to me that it would be hot to have somebody take my knickers and sniff them while they were masturbating. And I discovered a few years ago that this was a thing people find really hot. And I was like, oh my God, now suddenly I think this is the hottest thing in the whole world. And I would love for lots more men to have my knickers and wank over them.
Enter sofiagray.com.
Exactly.
So, okay, where can people both read your blogs, buy your books and listen to your audio porn? Where can they find you?
So my website is girlonthenet.com. And if they'd like to listen to the audio porn, it's girlonthenet.com/audio porn. And you'll find, I think I've got over 100 stories up there now. So yeah, have a little browse around. As you're on my site as well, if you search for particular topics that you like, you'll come up with not just the audio porn, but also blog posts and opinion pieces and stuff that I've written about it. Come and explore.
Perfect. And that's what we want in the world of kink, isn't it? Is exploration.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Fantastic. Well, today we are going to be exploring the topic of wax play. So we'd absolutely love your input on this as well.
Great. Yeah. Love a bit of wax play.
Awesome. Well, and just to break it down for anybody that's unfamiliar with it, wax play is a type of BDSM play that simply involves dripping or pouring hot wax on a partner's skin. It's often a type of temperature play that lets a dom take control over a sub, although you don't have to necessarily be a dom or sub to play with wax. G, what's your experience with wax play?
So I've tried it a few times with different people. I've had some experiences have been amazing, like just beautifully sensual, and we've really got the hang of, how high you have to drop the wax from to get a little bit of burn, but not too much burn. But I think the first time I ever tried it, I was hilariously bad at it. Like it was with a partner who was quite experimental. We were both quite experimental, and I think we didn't understand the golden rule of wax play, which is you're not supposed to drop it directly onto the skin from too close. You're supposed to, give it a bit of distance between where you drop the wax from and when it lands on the skin. So we both ended up just yelping and having to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, I want to say that was actually a very similar experience I had when I first tried wax play, but instead of it being more of the burn, we were almost too cautious about it because of the fear of burning. And because of that, we dripped it from too far away and made an absolute mess of my apartment floor.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and we will definitely discuss this more in depth, because let me tell you, wax does not come up easily from materials.
Tarp. You got to put out tarp.
Yes, there's absolutely ways to prepare, both, for the surroundings around you as well as your body itself.
Yes, yeah.
What are the best parts of the body to drip wax on?
Do you know, personally, I think the back's quite nice. There's something very I don't know. I like lying on my front and then feeling quite exposed. So having someone drip wax down my back or my spine and then onto my bum, that's always a really nice sensation. I've got a friend who really enjoys wax play on her nipples because she likes the temperature play and heat sensation. If you've got very sensitive nipples, that can be really like a really pleasurable place to do it.
Yeah, I like the way you said, though, when I think when you're laying on your front and it's dripping on your back, there's something extra exciting about that. I mean, temperature play in general is very exciting, but I think there's something added to that because you can't necessarily see when the wax is coming. You're not sure how hot it's going to be or when the next part it drips is going to be. So there's like that added excitement of, oh, when is this going to happen? The anticipation factor.
Yeah, definitely. There's something nice about the surprise of it. Yeah, you can do it if you're lying on your back. You can always blindfold the person who you're dripping onto. But yeah, there is something really nice about that intensity and surprise.
Yeah, good idea. I like that. So wax play, I mean, part of the excitement of it is that it releases endorphins, much like any other form of edge play. Are you familiar with other edge plays, G, like any knife play, breath play, fire play?
Breath play is something I'm a huge fan of. Knife play, not so much. And fire play, I just think I'm so clumsy. I've never tried fire play because I just know I'd mess it up and end up burning the house down and I couldn't bear it.
Oh, gosh. Well, actually, I'm glad that you mentioned that because there's definitely, with any type of edge play, I feel like there's absolutely a little bit of danger associated with it. And I use the term danger loosely because I don't want to ward people off from experimenting and trying it out. But there's also easy ways to kind of prepare yourselves heading into wax play that, you know, once you get into it, if you are prepared and have, you know, the tools for any sort of emergency, if you want to call it, that you're going to be okay. So what might be some ways that we could prepare ourselves for just in case there was some sort of accident if you're clumsy like G or myself?
Yeah. And me, come on, I'm clumsy too.
Absolutely always have a bowl of water or a wet towel within arm's reach. It might seem a little extreme, but I think a fire extinguisher might not be too bad to have close by. Again, I don't anticipate things getting that risky, but, you know, better safe than sorry. You can definitely avoid making the same mistakes that I made. Instead of having yourself on your bed or a carpet, preparing the area that you're going to be using with a tarp or some piece of plastic to prevent the wax from dripping. I feel like the floor, just like a plain wood floor, is an excellent place to start. And if you do decide to use the bed, maybe you need that extra comfort, definitely still put down the tarp or plastic to, you know, just make sure that we're not going to be dripping all over the place.
I know. It's nothing like going to a hardware store and being like, I need tarp, please. I'm painting my wall. It's like painting a wall.
Exactly. Yes, the wall being my back and the paint being wax. So I would say just be sure to be prepared. I mean, we say the same thing in all of our episodes that communication is key between you and your partner. Consensual, make sure everything is consensual and everyone knows what's going to be happening. But also, you know, just prepare yourselves both physically, mentally, and emotionally. G, are you familiar with the term SSC, safe, sane, and consensual?
Yes, I am. Yeah. I actually, there's that. And the other one that I've also been told is useful is RAC, risk aware consensual kink. So
awesome.
I think it's similar meanings. One of the things that I would always advise as part of it, because I mean I'm not a particularly brilliant dominant at the best of times, but one of my friends who's dominant told me this a while ago, and I found it a really helpful piece of advice, is that if you are the one who's being dominant in this scenario, so for instance, if you're the one pouring the wax onto someone else, always test it first on yourself. So, you know, I mean, same if you're using a new spanking implement like a cane or something. With wax, I would always pour it from the candle onto my own skin, usually on the inside of my wrists, because that's quite a delicate bit of skin. And that gives you an idea of exactly how hot the wax is and therefore, you know, whether or not you need to be extra careful or whether or not it's at quite a low temperature. Gives you a good indication for how you can use it on your partner.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's a fantastic tip. I would also ask you, do you think it's important? I've heard this from different people, and I know there's like some disagreement, but how do you feel about shaving body parts before pouring wax on them?
Personally, I absolutely wouldn't pour wax on any part of me that was still hairy just because it hurts when you take it off. But I think it depends. I'm sure some people would prefer it that way. And I know some people don't like shaving any of their body at all. And so they'd rather have it poured onto parts with hair anyway. I think it's just all going to come down to personal preference, to be honest. It does hurt slightly more getting the wax off. Like, for instance, if you're pouring it and you get some in your pubic hair, it might be quite painful to get rid of it. but usually a little bit of oil. Olive oil is usually quite good at helping to break it down. If you do get it stuck there and you don't want to have to just rip it out.
Yes, absolutely. I'm with you too. I would prefer the smooth surface. I also find this extra satisfaction of it being a smooth surface and just sort of like that old feeling when you were a kid of using glue and like the glue would get stuck on your fingertips and then it just kind of peels off all smooth. Like that's how I think about wax. Yeah, so
it's really
satisfying
that peeling it off.
Yeah, I love like picking things like in life. So like having to pick off wax and not like having a scab removed is very, very pleasurable. Question for you is about types of candles. You can't just like go to a store and get like any old like Glade candle or like Bath and Body Works candles. Can you talk to us about what's the best type of candles to use?
So personally, I don't do it enough that I have special candles, although I do know that you're not supposed to use beeswax candles.
Yes.
Because beeswax heats up. I think beeswax melts at a much, much, much hotter temperature. So it's not as safe to use as just a standard candle. But maybe you might know a little bit more about this than I do.
Yeah. In terms of the melting point of these candles too, beeswax is the one that we would definitely recommend you do not use for exactly the reason that G mentioned. It heats to a much higher degree than other candles, and because of that, it will burn much more. And if you're thinking like, oh, I want to be extreme, I want an extreme burn, that is not the extreme burn you want. You do not want to go to the emergency room and explain your burns. So no, we recommend the best choices are definitely going to be either soy or paraffin candles.
And also, if you're looking to get into using candles, like you're just like, oh my God, I'm nervous. Massage oil candles burn at the lowest temperature. And so, yeah, if you're feeling, dare I say, I'm more on the vanilla side, I would definitely use that to like kind of break into using candles.
Yeah, a good way to get started for sure. And I think there's this misunderstanding that you need to find a very specific type of candle and a very specific type of store for proper wax play. And honestly, there are plenty of options you can find on Etsy, Amazon, even your local craft store, but it's really just about reading the ingredients that are in them. There's a few ingredients that you definitely want to look out for. Anything that's metallic, the glitter in candle, I mean, these can all be poisonous for your body.
Even like scented candles.
Yes.
They smell good, but they may not feel good.
Yeah. So maybe surround yourselves with the yummy scented candles. I know the holiday season is upon us. We all want to smell like gingerbread cookies.
No pumpkin spice. Only drink it.
Only drink it, only smell it, not for your body. So yeah, definitely look out for ingredients like stearin and any dyes or colors or scents added to your candles. That's not what you want on your body. But yeah, stick to either the massage candles, the soy, or the paraffin, and absolutely avoid beeswax.
Is it smart to like rub lotion or massage oil on the parts of your body that you are getting waxed on? I heard that, so I wasn't sure.
Oh, I prefer that. How about you, G?
To be honest, I don't mind at all. I think it kind of depends. If it's more of a BDSM, like dominant punishment, humiliation type scene, then I probably wouldn't use lotion, but that's only because of the tone of it. Whereas if it's something that's a bit more sensual and romantic, then
yes,
probably yes, starting with some lotion and having being given a nice massage to start off with is a good way to sort of ease into it. I didn't realise there were like specific massage candles with a lower temperature though. I should get some of those.
Yeah.
I've never had any. I've just used normal like paraffin candles basically.
Yeah, well, and you know what? The paraffin and the soy candles melt around the same point. So they I think the paraffin candles are a little bit hotter. But massage oil candles are definitely going to be a little cooler to the touch. So, like Tracy mentioned, it's definitely a nice way to sort of ease your way in. And maybe you're not sure, how hot you want it to be just yet. It's a great place to start and rather go a little hotter than cooler. So yeah, absolutely. There's lots of choices. So whatever you use, just make sure you're checking what's in it. And I know we've mentioned a few places that people enjoy having wax dripped. I will definitely say, please make sure you're not using it internally.
Yes, no, don't put it in your inside your vagina or your ass. But you can use it on like your balls and your clit and stuff.
Yeah. I've had it dripped on my clit and I've absolutely loved it. G, what do you think? I know that you mentioned that your first experience with wax play was maybe on the side where you weren't quite sure of how far away to hold the candles. Have you found like a specific measurement that, although we have different metric systems, have you found like a specific measurement or distance that you think is sort of the ideal situation for wax play?
Do you know, I think it depends a little bit on my mood and how warmed up I've been, if that makes sense. So like,
sure.
Usually I would start from, I'm going to say about a meter. That would be what, 3 feet?
Okay. So 3 feet would be 36 inches.
Yeah. So I think 3 feet, and 3 feet is a good place to start, because then that usually is enough time for the wax to cool down a bit before it hits the skin. And then what someone else would do to me usually, because it's usually that way around, is gradually get slightly closer as time goes on. And obviously with a lot of communication about, how hot is that? One of the things I find really useful for any kind of BDSM play actually is using, when you start off playing and occasionally throughout a scene, checking in with someone using numbers as to how intense that sensation is. So where a 1 is, very weak, I can barely feel it, and 10 is, that is getting too much, I'm going to need to use my safe word soon. So just checking in with someone about the intensity of the sensation, because what feels really nice and super hot to one person could be way too hot and not sexy at all for someone else. So the main thing really is finding out what is exactly, what's the right temperature for your partner, and doing a little bit of that checking in at the beginning, starting off really far away, getting them to give you numbers in terms of how intense that feeling is. That just gives you a nice baseline that you can use as a guide for the rest of the scene.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great thing to point out. As with any kink, obviously different heat levels, different intensities are going to work for other people that don't work the same for somebody else. So I know that I've found that I know G mentioned about 3 feet, 36 inches. For me, I found like the optimal distance is maybe about half of that, like about 18 inches. Mm-hmm. I would definitely recommend that nobody go closer than about 12 inches or a foot. Like, I think that's where you're kind of closing in on the being too close to the point where you might risk burning your partner, or if you're the one having wax stripped on you, risk yourself being burned. So that would be my personal recommendation.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. It's that, you never want someone to end a scene feeling unhappy or hurt or needing, like you say, needing to go to the emergency room. Yeah. So yeah. If in doubt, be more cautious.
Yeah, that's not a trip I want to make to the emergency room.
I personally have very sensitive skin. And the first time I did it, I had like, just even from like, a high place, like over a foot, I still had like red marks after. So I was just curious about like what your thought, or like, what your recommendations are for like aftercare.
Oh, do you know? So it sort of depends. I mean, I would hope that no one would be like blistering or getting any kind of serious harm, because that means you're using the wax too intensely. For just kind of, if you're getting the redness on your skin and you want something that soothes it, then like just a cooling moisturizer I think would probably work quite well. I've occasionally, you get into the shower to shower off some of the excess wax if I haven't managed to scrape it all off, and then a nice like body lotion or moisturizer afterwards. I often find is quite good. I use it after, spanking and impact play as well, because there's something very soothing about the coldness of it. The other thing potentially is ice cubes. If you're doing wax play and you're potentially interested in introducing another bit of temperature play along with it, alternating drips of wax and ice cubes is quite a fun way to soothe some of the more intense sensations of the wax and also introduce an extra element into the scene.
I love that. I love mixing up. I mean, it's again, it reminds me of like if you're swimming in a swimming pool and then you go into the hot tub and then you jump back into the swimming pool and your body's all hot and warm. I love that feeling. So I'm a fan.
Oh yeah, that is amazing.
Yeah, I am a fan of mixing the ice cube with the wax. I think that's fantastic. G, do you have a specific way that I feel like this is one of the hesitations people have with wax play is the worry of, oh my gosh, how do I get the wax off my body? So what are maybe some of the ways you might recommend for people to kind of, just clean themselves up afterwards?
Well, do you know, I'm a big fan of just picking it off with my finger. I think it's really satisfying.
Oh, great. You like to pick like Tracy does.
You're a picker. Yay, pickers.
Yeah, it's just good, isn't it? There's something really fun about it. I think as a general rule, if it's all like clustered in one place, you can get really big bits of it as well to all pick off all at once, and it's really satisfying. But it should come off in the shower. Like most wax should just come off fairly easily in the shower, and then towel dry yourself afterwards, and it should get any extra flakes off. But yeah, generally I'd pick it off and then wash the rest in the shower.
Yeah, fantastic. You know what? You guys are pickers. I think of myself as a scraper. Like I like to scrape things off. So I've actually used I won't use a credit card because I value my credit cards too much. But I feel like I've used like a library card to just kind of like scrape off the excess wax, and that's worked really well for me. Mm-hmm. But I mean, again, reading is sexy. Library cards to the rescue.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think people can do wax play alone?
Yeah, I think so. There are some bloggers I follow who've done wax play on their own to do photo shoots for, if they're taking like sexy nude photos, you can like dripping wax and then taking a photo from a specific angle can sometimes be really sexy. But yeah, I think most... as a general rule, we tend to think of kink as a thing that you do with at least one other person. There's loads of kink stuff that you can do on your own.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, I guess my final question for you then is, G, if someone is looking into getting started with wax play, what would be just like a few words of advice that you have for them, just as they're kind of starting this journey into a new kink?
Well, I think they've already done the best thing possible, which is listen to this podcast, because I feel like you've got loads of interesting information on it. And it's a great place for them to start if they follow the safety tips that you gave earlier on. I think, I would also maybe advise them to just have a little look around at, again, sex blogs and other sex bloggers who are, I haven't written that much about wax play. I should totally write about it. But there are some great sex bloggers who've written loads about it and taken photos of themselves doing wax play. And it's great to go and have a look at that and just get a feel for the sorts of things you can do and maybe ideas for where you want to do it, on which parts of the body and what kind of candles you want to use. I would say, again, we're back to reading is sexy. I'm glad that that's the message of this podcast.
Absolutely.
Have a read around and
we need to have that in more episodes. Reading is sexy.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited for people to check out your blog and your audio porn. And I hope that this recording inspires you to go and write a little bit more about wax play.
Yeah, totally. Well, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. It's been really good fun chatting about everything.
Fantastic.
Yeah, this was delightful. Whether you're looking to buy or sell used panties, Sofia Gray has got you covered. If you want to earn some extra cash, you can set up your own shop in minutes and start selling your own used underwear. And they take no commission. You keep 100% of every single sale that you make. If you got a kink for used panties and you're looking to buy your next pair, look no further. Oh, and the whole process is completely anonymous. Sofia Gray will never share, store, or archive your personal information. The name Sofia Gray won't even appear on your bank receipt. So head on over to sofiagray.com to start selling or buying used panties now. Until next time, I'm your host, Tracy Bust.
And I'm Lacey Bloom.
And we're here to say, let them be kinky. There's no kink shaming here.